It was a sleepy little town in the middle of America, the kind of place where all the news revolved around which farmer had won the blue ribbon for his zucchini at the county fair, or when the high school was getting a new roof. After 30 years, it was the kind of place where nothing ever happened until it did. And that's how everyone in town described the man who watched the bridge. They called him the Watcher. He never spoke to anyone, so no one knew his name. And the only reason anyone knew about him was because he was always sitting on this old stone bridge that ran over the Mill Creek, which ran through the middle of town. The bridge was probably 100 years old, and most people tried to avoid it because the stones were uneven and the boards creaked dangerously. But the Watcher didn't care. That's where he sat day and night, just sitting there with his brown eyes staring off into the distance. Now, the kids at first thought it was kinda cool to have a mysterious old man living in their town, and they would go up to him and ask him questions, but he never answered. Then they stopped asking questions. Then they stopped going to the bridge altogether. Only now and then you'd see some brave soul walk across the bridge and disappear into the mist that always seemed to cling to its stones. One crisp autumn night for teenagers dared each other to spend the night on the bridge. Legend said that if you went on the bridge after dark and spoke your darkest secret out loud, the fog would rise up and show you the Watcher. Some people believed it was the ghost of a man who had drowned, trying to save his daughter, and others said it was the spirit of an escaped mental patient who was hiding from the police. No one really knew, but everyone was scared to find out. So the four friends met at the edge of the bridge, and they were just about to turn back, when Kyle, the biggest of the bunch, stepped forward. He took a deep breath and said, "I'm scared." Then the fog rolled in and enveloped him completely. When it cleared, he was gone. They looked around wildly, but he was nowhere to be found. And suddenly they remembered what the legend said, that the Watcher would take you away if you told him your darkest fear. They started to run, but by the time they got to the end of the bridge, the street had vanished. All that lay before them was a dark, empty field. They screamed for help, but no one came. And so they spent the night huddled together on the ground, too afraid to go home, too afraid to stay where they were. Then when the sun came up, they got up, brushed themselves off and started walking toward the road. But they soon realized they had no idea where they were. All they could see was the dark woods on either side of them. They walked for hours without seeing a single house, without seeing anything except for the trees. At noon, they were exhausted. And finally, when they saw a farmhouse in the distance, they ran towards it. But when they got to the porch, they noticed a sign that read, "Beware of dog." They didn't want to disturb whoever lived there, so they turned around and kept walking. By now, they were desperate. They had no food, no water, and their cell phones were dead. Just as they were about to give up hope, they saw a car driving towards them. They flagged it down and explained their situation to the driver, who turned out to be a local farmer. He took pity on them and drove them back into town. But when they got back to the bridge, they noticed something strange. The road on the other side of the bridge was now paved, and where once there had been a field was now a row of brand new houses. What had once been a rickety wooden sign now read, "Welcome to Ashton Creek," and the weathered stone posts were freshly painted white. The four friends looked at each other in disbelief. How could everything have changed like that? They had only been gone for a few hours, maybe a day at the most. So why did the town look like a different place entirely? And where was Kyle? They searched everywhere for him, but he was nowhere to be found. And so the four friends went their separate ways, each blaming the other for what had happened to them. They never spoke of it again, not until one day when they met up at their 10-year reunion. By now, they had all moved away. They had all started new lives. But the memory of that night still lingered in their minds. It was with a sense of foreboding that they returned to the bridge, only to find it gone. In its place was a busy intersection with cars whizzing by and people rushing to and fro. They stared at each other in disbelief. Had all those years changed them so much that they couldn't even recognize their own hometown? Or had the Watcher somehow erased it from existence? As the night wore on, more and more memories flooded back to them. The Watcher, the fog, the field, the farmhouse, the dog, the car, the new houses, and then Kyle. Where was Kyle? One of them suggested that they should go looking for him, but the others weren't so sure. What if he didn't want to be found? What if he was better off without them? Suddenly, they heard a voice behind them. "Are you looking for someone?" They turned around and saw a man standing there. He was tall and thin with long gray hair and piercing brown eyes. The four friends stared at him in disbelief. Was this the Watcher? Had he come for them? The man smiled sadly. "I'm sorry," he said, "but I think you're mistaken. I don't know any of you." The four friends were disappointed, but they pressed him anyway. "Are you sure? You look exactly like the man we used to see on the bridge." The man shook his head. "That man is dead," he said. "He died 10 years ago right here on this bridge." The four friends gasped. So the Watcher wasn't a ghost. He was a real person who had actually died on the bridge. But how could that be? The man sighed. "Sometimes," he said, "people just die. There's no mystery, no legend, no story. Sometimes it's just a sad, lonely death." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving the four friends to their own devices. They've wandered around town for a while, talking to people, trying to piece together the history of the bridge and the man who had died there. But all they could find was speculation, rumors, stories that had been passed down from one generation to the next. Finally, they went back to the bridge, which was now a busy intersection with cars whizzing by and people rushing to and fro. The four friends stood there for a long time, watching the traffic go by, thinking about the man who had died there 10 years ago. They wondered who he was, what his life had been like, what his dreams had been, what his fears had been, and they wondered if he had ever loved anyone. As the sun began to set, they decided to go home. They had learned nothing, solved nothing, understood nothing, but as they drove away, they couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. The Watcher might be dead, but his story would live on in the hearts and minds of those who had known him. And so the legend of the man who watched the bridge continued to be told for many years to come. People would come from all over just to see the place where he had died, to feel the sadness that permeated the air. But no one ever saw him again. Not until one night when he appeared in the fog, silent, watching, waiting for the next secret to unfold.